Okay, so today we are going to talk about 6 principles of design. Okay, and well, actually, we're only going to talk about the first 3, but the last 3, emphasis, harmony, and rhythm, just kind of fall in with the first 3. You need the first 3 as kind of your pillars, your structure of a room. So just to move through it quickly, the first one is balance. And balance is just distributing your objects in a room properly. So basically, when you walk into a room, it doesn't look lopsided. We have 3 types: symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial. Symmetrical is your most traditional. It gives the most visual stimulation, I guess. When you walk into a room, it feels formal. Usually it's created by having duplicated objects. So in this room you have the matching nightstands, the matching lamps, even the matching floral arrangements, and of course the posts on the bed just, create that symmetry. And usually when you have those duplicated objects, it's drawing your eye to a focal point. So that would be your emphasis. So in this room, the focal point is really this magnificent headboard and the mirror over the top. In this room, we have identical chairs, identical lamps, and side tables that are drawing your eye to the artwork and the gray sofa. You have symmetrical pillows placed on each side. And even though the objects in the bookcase are not duplicated, they're visually balanced, which is asymmetrical balance. Any questions? There's going to be a quiz.
In today's, you're seeing these pictures here, but in today's electronic environment, there's a lot of digital in each room and things like that. How do you incorporate those things into it to where it's not just a big black space?
It's hard, especially with a lot of open concept rooms, because typically we are designing a seating arrangement around a big flat screen television, which is, my favorite thing is to not put the TV over the fireplace, but that's usually how it ends up. We just have to work with that because typically people like to look at their fire and their TV. So a lot of the newer homes that are open concept, there aren't really walls to work with there, so it does present a challenge to getting a balanced room.
Would a perfectly square room be better for getting balance? Because a lot of these rooms now are just like
All
kind of
wonky
jagged.
angle.
Yeah,
Yes,
jagged,
yes.
All the rooms in my house are all wookie.
They're crazy.
Yes. Okay, so here again, we see everything is duplicated, from these ottomans to the chairs to the sofa, pillows. Everything is perfectly symmetrical until you get to the coffee table. Why does the coffee table work?
Because it draws your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
To a center, yeah.
And it's balanced because, any guesses?
Well, I would say it's balanced because of the way it's aligning between the chairs and the couch. And it's also centered in the carpet area, which brings a focus on the material it's made of.
Yep. And even though our arrangements here are tall and wispy, they're balanced out by this heavy pattern and color with the books. So visually, it's balanced. So we have both going on in that room. Yes. Okay, asymmetrical balance. So if you draw an imaginary line down the center here between that big piece of artwork and the pendant shade, that's where you are kind of measuring how to do asymmetrical balance. It's tougher to do because you're measuring visually, and you have to really look at not just the scale of things, but it would be completely different if the graphic in that artwork was, you know, flowers or something like that.
Well, you're also using that window for a light source, which is drawing attention to the asymmetrical side. So what it
Very
does is
good. So on the other side of the room, we have this big oversized arrangement that creates texture as well. So that visual interest with the texture balances everything out without competing with the artwork. So you have a nice visual balance there. Asymmetrical arrangements are typically not as formal. They're a little more playful and usually done more in, you know,
Modern style?
yeah. Okay, here we have both going on. So we have the big artwork and the duplicated mirrors on each side that draw your eye in. That's where our emphasis is. The reason this room works is because we have these big windows over here and they placed a light colored sofa in front of them. So if that sofa was darker, it would make it lap-sided. All the emphasis would go to that side of the room. But because it's light, it doesn't overpower these two chairs. The balance is created also because the chairs are done in a pattern and a dark color. So, you know, even though we have big objects over here, there's interest created over here with the pattern.
and the darker piece of furniture under the art also pulls you to it.
Yes, correct. Okay, this is Radial Balance, which is usually a circular piece of furniture and everything radiates around it like the sun. You could say that the focal point or the center of this radius is the coffee table, or you could say it's this really wonderful curved sofa, which is really the showstopper in the room. But because of the shape of the sofa, it pulls your eye all around the room to kind of showcase everything that's around this coffee table. A round dining table is the most typical place where you will find radial balance. I love this arrangement because if this was a heavy wood round dining table, it would completely overpower everything else. There would be way too much going on in the room, in my opinion. But because it's light and airy and it also has this kind of flamboyant, curvy base, you know, it can stand on its own, and these tufted chairs all around it just complement it. The round chandelier pendant light, you know, even though it has a lot going on, it's just adding to it. This room is perfectly done. Okay, here we have all three going on. So where do you see radial balance?
It's with the round coffee table.
Okay, where do you see asymmetrical balance?
Asymmetrical balance is the difference between a lamp and the pottery.
And the chairs are offset from each other.
Not chairs being offset in the lighter colors with the dark colors in the front.
Okay, and where's our symmetry?
Around the main artwork.
And the sofa pillows. That's a great sofa, right? Okay, so now we're going to talk about scale, which is basically the size of your objects in the room, and the most simple way to put it is you don't want a giant sofa with a little tiny coffee table or a little tiny rug in front of it. This is a really interesting example, not just because the furniture and artwork is unusual, but just because there's a lot going on for such a simple design. We have this really interesting piece of artwork, and if we didn't have these oval pieces on each side, that art would just kind of look strange there. But because they added these pieces on the side, it stands up well to the sofa. Again, if the sofa didn't have this detail here in the banding and in the pillows, the sofa would just get kind of lost. Okay, and because the sofa blends in with the wall color, it allows this artwork to take center stage and be your emphasis without competing, okay?
It's also tying in modern and classical because the torso is reminiscent of the Greek statues where the arms and the bust had fallen off, and then the surrounding areas are actually older. It's actually different generations if you look at the figures of the people, so it's time and classic.
Nice observation. Okay. All right, here we have a big room with big windows and big furniture. I want to point out mostly our shelving unit and the coffee table. If those were more solid pieces, they would completely overpower this light colored furniture. Your eyes would just go to them and it would not really pull your eye all around the room the way it should. But because of the open work in them, it really, really makes everything work well together. You know, they act more like art, in my opinion, just because they have so much interest and it keeps the room soothing and with that nice contemporary feel.
Is that got influences from Feng Shui?
Feng Shui? I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Okay, I love this room. This sectionals can often feel like they just take up the whole space and don't really leave any other place for your eye to go. This room is obviously large enough to handle this big, sexy, curvy sectional, which just is a showstopper on its own. But because this ottoman has this tufting on it, it's not only the right size for the sectional, but it gives that visual interest to create balance, so they're not competing with each other. They're in the same colorway and everything else, but they give a nice balance. Again, we're going to talk just a little bit about rhythm here. When you see this pattern here in the fabric on the chairs and the sofa pillows, that's rhythm, because that little bit of pattern that's pushed around the room that pulls your eye around. And it creates a very soothing feeling when you walk into a room that's done right, whether you realize it or not. Okay, and proportion. And this is basically how all the little pieces in your space work together. And this is one of my favorite rooms, and it's just because if you look at each little section and every little piece, it all works. So if you just take this little desk area right here, if that was all there is, that works well. You can't really see in this picture, but there's two little pieces of artwork over the large piece, and everything just works. It's balanced well. Nothing is competing for attention here. And then this arrangement, although it's not duplicated, it doesn't compete, but still balances well with what's on the other side. You have a lot of nice texture with the coral and the wood. And see how the coral is just placed strategically around the room. We have it here, and up there in those little alcoves. And that also just pulls your eye through. The coffee table is the perfect size, perfect placement. They have a mix of patterns, but nothing is competing for attention. Everything's complementary. And on the side table, if you didn't have those books under the lamp, in my opinion, it would just look a little blah, but the books just bring that up just a little bit so that, you know, it balances well with everything that's going on that wall there.
Jenny, I like the room, but I'm wondering if anyone else is bothered by the stack of wood.
You see that a lot in spaces these days, especially maybe.
Well, that's a non-functional chimney.
Right, it's not functional. Some people are just stacking wood in the fireplace these days and not using it. So.
Really?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, and some people also, they want a mantle, but they don't really care about having a fire. So the solution to that is to just stack wood in it, or to maybe put some candles in it, something else.
Let me suggest something we did in a log home, and that was to have the mantle without the supports on the side and a fireplace insert sitting there, whether we used it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Now, You can get the.
The wood's bothering him.
Well, you know what?
The whole time you were
It's a
talking, I'm
trend.
looking at that stack of wood.
Fine stack of wood.
It's a trend, and it will pass, I promise.
That's for sure.
Okay, and here's one more little example of proportion. Everything works together. The mirror is the right scale for the table. The objects all are playing nice with each other, and nothing is taking away from the ornamentation on the mirror or on the table. Here we, how much time do I have? Okay. Here we have color. Color also should be used in the right proportions. So this is, we have blue as our main color, and then the green, and then the little splash of that accent color. Here's a monochromatic room, all sophisticated neutrals, also done with that same 60-30-10 rule. In this room, the colors that are in the wall art are taken out and splashed around the room in the right proportions. So you see just a little bit of the slate blue in the pattern, and you see the light tan and that caramel color in the leather on the ottoman and in this detail on that armoire. So just quickly, some before and afters. Just to see what a professional designer can do. When they
I
know
can
what
live
they're
with the
doing.
wood in the fireplace.
That's a real fireplace.
That's
Look at
the
that.
after.
That's huge.
Wow.
That's after. That's the same room?
Yep.
Mhm.
Same room.
Can you go back?
Just clearing up
Yeah.
all that
Go back to the
clutter.
first one. Go back to the first
How
one.
do I go back?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
We'll look at it again in a minute.
Okay.
Go ahead and finish through.
That's a before. It's after. Different view. But I love this room. It just works so beautifully. Perfect amount of pattern. Before. And after. What's really great about this room is this awesome light fixture, because there's so much pattern and everything going on over here that it could easily be lopsided, but this one light fixture does its job very well on this side and just balances the whole thing out. And that's all.
Thank you.